The anthems of our analog childhood. 6 TV songs 80s kids never forgot. What's up, fellow survivors of the analog age? Wait, don't scroll past. What if I reminded you there was a time we actually looked forward to TV theme songs instead of hitting the skip intro button? Before streaming services, before binge watching, we had these epic little musical masterpieces that burned themselves into our brains forever. Today we're diving into 6 TV anthems that shaped Gen X and explain why we still randomly burst into theme songs during important meetings. If you want more of these nostalgia trips that'll make your kids wonder why you're singing about places where everybody knows your name, smash that subscribe button faster than you raced home to catch your favorite TV show. Let's drop the needle on this vinyl time machine. Just a couple of good old boys, never meaning no harm. Admit it, you just sang that in your head, didn't you? Waylon Jennings' country anthem for the Dukes of Hazzard was basically the soundtrack to Friday nights for any kid with a TV between 1979 and 1985. Nothing said the weekend has officially started like hearing that guitar twang and watching the generally defy physics on some backwoods Georgia dirt road. What made this theme song particularly special was that outlaw country superstar Waylon Jennings didn't just perform it, he was also the show's narrator, providing that gravelly voiceover that explained the Duke Boys' latest predicament. The song actually hit number 1 on the country charts in 1980 and even cracked the Billboard Hot 100, proving that America's love for car chases and cut-off jean shorts crossed all musical boundaries. And let's talk about that opening sequence, a visual masterpiece of automotive destruction set perfectly to country rock. The freeze-frame shots of the General Lee in mid-jump, the close-ups of CB radios and moonshine jugs, and Uncle Jesse looking wise in his overalls. This wasn't just a TV intro, it was a mini action movie every week that promised adventure, car chases, and Boss Hogg getting his comeuppance. For kids growing up in the suburbs, this was our glimpse into the world where problems could be solved by driving really fast and occasionally shooting dynamite arrows. The behind-the-scenes story of the song is pretty fascinating too. Jennings was initially reluctant to be associated with the show, thinking it might damage his outlaw country credibility, but the producers convinced him, and the theme song ended up introducing his music to an entirely new audience of kids who had never set foot in a honky-tonk. He recorded the full version in just 2 takes, because that's how outlaws do it. And the song became so synonymous with the show that when CBS tried to replace the Duke Boys with lookalike cousins Coy and Vance in Season 5, even the theme song couldn't save the ratings. The lyrics perfectly captured the show's whole vibe, running from the law while somehow still being the good guys. It's like the entire premise of the show was, what if criminals were actually heroes because the sheriff is corrupt and also they've got a cool car? Only in the Reagan era, folks. How many of you tried to slide across the hood of your parents' car after watching this show? Be honest, I'll bet there are thousands of Gen Xers out there with childhood scars from failed General Lee hood slide attempts. If you've got one, share your battle story in the comments. Speaking of iconic shows with unforgettable themes, before the Fonz jumped the shark, he was dancing to our next musical memory. Sunday, Monday, Happy Days. If those 4 words just transported you to Arnold's Drive-In with a mental image of the Fonz hitting the jukebox, congratulations! You're officially old enough to remember when sitcoms had laugh tracks and everyone wanted a leather jacket. The Happy Days theme by Pratt and McLean is a masterclass in TV theme songwriting. It was catchy enough for you to sing along every week for 11 seasons, but not so annoying that you'd change the channel. What most people don't know is that the show originally used Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley and the Comets for the first 2 seasons. The switch to the custom Happy Days theme happened in Season 3, and it became so iconic that the single version hit number 5 on the Billboard charts in 1976. The story behind the song is pretty wild. Charles Fox and Norman Gimbel, who wrote the music and lyrics, were prolific TV-themed composers who also created the themes for Laverne and Shirley, the Happy Days spin-off, and Wonder Woman. Pratt and McLean were a singing duo who had been performing together since high school, and this theme song was their big break. The network actually held auditions for who would perform the song, and after Pratt and McLean won, they turned it into a full-length single and became a bigger hit than anyone expected. Talk about catching lightning in a bottle, or should I say in a jukebox. The opening sequence itself is a time capsule for pure Americana. The Arnold's neon sign, the Letterman jackets, the classic cars, and of course, that iconic moment when the Fonz checks his hair in the mirror and gives it a thumbs up. Every element was carefully designed to trigger warm, fuzzy feelings about a decade most of the show's viewers had never actually experienced firsthand. It's like the visual equivalent of a comfort food, mac and cheese for your eyeballs. The sugary, upbeat tune perfectly captured the show's nostalgic, idealized version of the 1950s America, a land of sock hops, malt shops, and sayings like, "sit on it," when you were mad. The show was literally Gen X being nostalgic about baby boomer nostalgia. We were watching our parents' childhoods through rose-colored TV screens while wearing parachute pants and neon sweatbands. The irony is delicious. Did your family gather around the TV for Happy Days night? Were you more of a Richie or Fonzie fan? Whatever you do, don't get me started on Joni Loves Chachi. We're not that desperate for content yet. Now let's time travel from the fake 50s to the real 60s through the lens of the 80s with our next anthem. If you've ever had an intense flashback to awkward adolescence just from hearing Joe Cocker's raspy voice, you probably watched The Wonder Years. This show took the Beatles' cheerful little ditty about friendship and drugs and transformed it, via Cocker's legendary Woodstock performance, into the perfect backdrop for suburban coming-of-age angst. Unlike other theme songs that were written specifically for their shows, this 1968 cover of the Beatles' classic brought its own historical weight. When it played over footage of grainy Super 8 home movies of kids playing in sprinklers and riding bikes, it somehow made viewers nostalgic for childhoods they never even had. The song's message about needing help from friends to get by perfectly matched Kevin Arnold's journey through adolescence with his best friend Paul and his on-again, off-again love interest, Winnie Cooper. The opening sequence itself was revolutionary for TV at the time. No flashy graphics, no cast member smiling at the camera, just authentic-looking home movie footage that could be pulled from anyone's family archive. Each snippet told a mini-story about suburban childhood, a boy refusing to eat his vegetables, a family photo where someone blinks, kids piling into a station wagon. And somehow, this humble collection of mundane moments, set to Cocker's raw emotional vocals, created one of the most powerful openings in television history. It didn't say, "Welcome to our wacky sitcom." It said, "Remember what it felt like to be 12? The choice of Joe Cocker's version was particularly inspired. His performance at Woodstock had become legendary. This British guy with spasmodic movements howling and transforming a Beatles song into something primal and emotional. The producers could have chosen the original Beatles version, but they knew Cocker's raspy, world-weary interpretation captured something essential about looking back at youth from the perspective of adulthood. It was the perfect musical embodiment of the show's central conceit. Adult Kevin looking back on his childhood with both nostalgia and the wisdom of experience. The genius of The Wonder Years was that it was a double nostalgia whammy. Gen Xers in the late 80s feeling nostalgic about the 60s, when baby boomers were feeling nostalgic about the 50s. See the previously mentioned Happy Days. It's like nostalgia inception. No wonder our generation is so messed up. How many of you had your first crush while watching Kevin and Winnie's romance unfold? And how many of you still can't hear the song without hearing Daniel Stern's narration in your head? I remember the summer of '69. Drop a comment if you still wonder what happened to Winnie Cooper after the series finale. Speaking of places we all wanted to go, our next theme song invited us to a place where everybody knows your name. Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Has a TV theme song ever spoken a more universal truth? Gary Portnoy's Where Everybody Knows Your Name wasn't just a theme song for a sitcom about a Boston bar, it was an anthem for every exhausted adult who just wanted to go somewhere comfortable at the end of a hard day. With its piano-driven melody and surprisingly profound lyrics about wanting to be where everybody knows your name and they're always glad you came, the song tapped into something deep in the American psyche. We all want our own Cheers, don't we? A place where Norm gets a hearty greeting, Cliff shares useless trivia, and Sam and Diane will they won't they tension keeps us coming back week after week. The theme song almost never happened, at least not the version that we know and love. Gary Portnoy and Judy Hart Angelo wrote and submitted multiple songs to the show's creator before finally landing on the winner. Their first attempts were rejected for being too focused on Boston or not capturing the essence of the show. Legend has it that when they performed the final version for the producers, the room went silent before everyone agreed they'd found their theme. Sometimes creative magic happens on the fifth try. The visuals that accompanied the song were a loving tour of Boston history, showing old photographs of actual Beantown bars from the late 1800s through the mid-20th century. The final shot of the exterior of the Bull and Finch pub the real-life inspiration for Cheers, became so iconic that the actual bar eventually renamed itself Cheers Beacon Hill and became one of Boston's biggest tourist attractions. Talk about the power of a good theme song. It literally changed reality. The song was so popular that a full-length version was released and actually hit the Billboard Hot 100 chart, proving that even as teenagers, Gen Xers seriously craved the stability of a neighborhood bar, where, as the song says, our troubles are all the same. Be honest, how many of you have walked into a bar at least once in your life hoping that someone would shout out your name? I can't be the only one who's been disappointed when I walk into my local watering hole and it's just crickets. Maybe I need to tip better. If you thought romance was complicated at Cheers, wait until you hear our next theme song from a show that defined 80s sexual tension. Before Bruce Willis was jumping off exploding buildings in Die Hard, he was verbally sparring with Sybil Shepherd to the smooth jazz vocals of Al Jarreau in Moonlighting. This theme song was the epitome of 80s sophistication. Saxophone solos, synthesizers, and lyrics about doing impossible things while the camera panned over glamour shots of the show's stars. The show perfectly captured the show's mix of detective noir and romantic comedy. Jarreau, a 7-time Grammy winner, brought his signature scatting and jazzy vocals to a theme that sounded like it belonged in a smoky piano bar rather than primetime TV. The producers knew exactly what they were doing, creating a mood that was both mysterious and sexy, just like the unresolved tension between Maddie Hayes and David Addison. What's particularly fascinating about this theme song is how it evolved over the show's run. The first season actually used a different instrumental theme before the producers realized that they needed something more distinctive. When they commissioned the now famous Al Jarreau version for season 2, it gave the show a musical identity that perfectly matched its unique blend of comedy, drama, and fourth wall breaking. The theme became so associated with the show's particular vibe that It's Got a Real Moonlighting feel became shorthand in Hollywood for anything with a snappy dialogue and sexual tension. The visuals of the opening sequence were just as carefully crafted as the music, soft focus glamour shots of Willis and Shepherd that made them look like movie stars, not TV actors. Intercut with film noir imagery and blue-tinted cityscapes, the whole sequence screamed, "This isn't just your average detective show." It was aspirational TV that made us all want to trade barbs in designer clothes while solving impossible crimes and looking impossibly beautiful. No wonder Gen X has such an unrealistic expectations about workplace relationships. Moonlighting was that rare show where even if you had to miss an episode, you'd still at least tune in for the theme song. The full version actually included lines about "some walk by night, some fly by day," establishing the film's noir credentials right from the start. It was like Raymond Chandler and Cary Grant had a baby, and that baby was raised by Kenny G. How many of you rooted for David and Maddie to get together? And then how many of you were disappointed when they actually did? Classic 80s TV problem. The tension was always better than the resolution. Drop a comment if you ever tried to adopt Bruce Willis's smirk as your own signature look. Our final theme song takes us from the jazzy streets of LA to the neon-soaked beaches of Miami. Sometimes a song becomes so associated with a TV moment that you can't hear it without seeing the images. Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight wasn't actually the theme song for Miami Vice. That honor goes to Jan Hammer's instrumental. But it might as well have been after it was featured in the show's pilot episode. That scene of Don Johnson driving his Ferrari through the Miami night while Collins' moody synths and drums played became one of the most iconic TV moments of the 80s. The song had already been a hit when it was released in 1981, but its use in the Miami Vice pilot in 1984 cemented its status as the unofficial anthem of cool detectives with beard stubble and pastel suits. The song's dark atmosphere, building tension, and that explosive drum break matched perfectly with the show's visual style and tone. The actual show's theme by Jan Hammer deserves its own recognition. That synthesizer-heavy instrumental captured the essence of 80s Miami with its blend of electronic and Latin influences. It was so popular it hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1985, one of the rare TV instrumentals to top the charts. But even with the successful official theme, it's Collins' song that many people first think of when remembering the show, a testament to how powerfully that pilot episode embedded itself in pop culture. The In the Air Tonight sequence almost didn't happen. Director Thomas Carter and producer Michael Mann had to personally convince Collins to let them use the song, as the artist was initially reluctant to have his music associated with a TV show. The scene itself was revolutionary. Nearly 5 full minutes with almost no dialogue, just music and moody visuals. NBC executives reportedly hated it, thinking viewers would be bored and changed the channel. Instead, it defined the visual language of the entire series and changed how music was used in television forever. After Miami Vice, TV shows weren't just about dialogue and plot, they could be about creating a vibe, a feeling, and an atmosphere. This wasn't just background music, it was an integral part of telling the story. Before Miami Vice, TV shows rarely used pop music in a cinematic way. Creator Michael Mann essentially turned television into MTV, giving us music video-style sequences that prioritized mood over dialogue. Suddenly, every show wanted its "in the air tonight" moment. How many of you still can't resist air drumming to that famous Phil Collins drum break? I know I've embarrassed my kids at more than one stoplight. And how many of you convinced your parents to buy a white linen suit or loafers with no socks because of Crockett and Tubbs? The 80s have a lot to answer for, fashion-wise. And there you have it, folks. 6 TV anthems that planted themselves in our brains and refused to leave, no matter how many new passwords or PIN numbers we try to remember instead. These songs did more than just introduce their shows. They became the soundtrack to our after-school and primetime lives. What's amazing is how these themes still trigger such vivid memories. One chord from any of these songs, and you're suddenly back on your parents' couch, eating microwave popcorn, arguing with your sister about whose turn it is to hold the remote. These weren't just songs, they were weekly rituals, the starting guns for our favorite escapes. If your brain still automatically sings any of these themes when someone mentions the show, drop a music note emoji in the comments. And if you want us to cover more TV themes that defined our youth, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Next time, we might dive into those Saturday morning cartoon themes that still pop into your head during important work meetings. Until then, stay nostalgic, stay vocal in the shower where no one hears you singing, and remember, we may not have had streaming, but at least we had theme songs worth waiting through. Later, dudes and dudettes.